Welcome back, everybody. Sheepdog Smokey here, as always, and welcome to another Wednesday morning. This will be really the last video in the series discussing the beginnings and the foundations of American history. We've looked at Columbus through the start of the Revolutionary War, with the animosity between the Crown and the colonies, with Spain and France deciding to aid the colonies in the fight against the Crown, and then deciding, no, never mind, we're done as soon as it's over. We've seen that the British decided that, doesn't matter what the treaty says, we're not going to trade with this new country or allow them to trade with other countries. The basic revelation and realization that we're broke, and deciding that since we can't just tax people, which is kind of logical considering that's why we fought a war to become a free nation, they opened up territory to be settled, and you could purchase land. But in all of this, they realized that the Articles of Confederation and the Declaration of Independence just were not enough to really allow for this new venture, this new country, to succeed on its own. Before we go further, please remember to go on and subscribe, turn on notifications, so that you're not only notified on Wednesday mornings of these videos, but aware of all other content as it posts. Also remember to like and share the video so that not only is the algorithm affected, but also so that we can widen the conversation. Now, looking at the Constitution, there are a lot of different things being done, but it really does boil down just to setting up the foundation and framework of the government. Article 1 sets up Congress. It establishes that there will be a House of Representatives composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualification requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. This is really what leads to the Electoral College. The House of Representatives is proportional representation of the states. If we had a direct popular vote only, at the beginning, New York would have likely controlled the entire country. Looking 240 odd years later, it would be New York and California, Washington, possibly, because they can outvote so many states when they combine. The founders realized that in government, everyone deserves a vote, a representative. They deserve to be heard, but not in every sense. The House of Representatives is proportional. Texas has more representatives than Rhode Island. California, a little bit larger, has virtually the same. We're all represented based on our state. And that is why the Electoral College is the way it is. There are 435 seats in the House. Therefore, you have to get to 270. And I'll get to the Electoral College later. I'm going to actually do a whole video on it. But you have to get to 270 so that you win more than half, which I realize 270 times 2 is 540. But you have 535 representatives total when you account for the Senate. And you can't divide 535 in half. So we went to 70 to say you have to beat halfway. It also sets when the elections are, every 2 years. Now, as the states were added, as the country grew, and as seats were added, that is where we get to this half of the House every 2 years. We don't completely re-elect the entire House every 2 years. I personally think we should. But that's beside the point. It sets that no person shall be a representative who shall not have attained the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state which he shall be chosen. This is another one I disagree with. Now, a lot of states have gone on to address this but not all of them have. Basically, according to the Constitution, you have to be a resident of your state to be a member of the House. You're then just assigned a district, or you win a district. If we look at California, Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, they don't live in their districts. Maxine Waters' opponent this year is highlighting that she lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion miles away from the district she supposedly represents. I personally believe, as he does, that representatives should come from the district they wish to represent. I know my representative here in Texas, he spends a lot of time here in his district, either in his office or out talking to people, especially this year since he's up for re-election. When you get to the Senate, the elections are every 4 years, and they are staggered as the Senate grew. But that is where representation is equal. It's a similar situation. It is a reimagining of the form of government the colonists knew, that being the House of Lords and the House of Commons. The House of Commons was larger, but actually held less power. And that's where they began to make changes. For example, any tax at this point, if it is a tax, must originate in the House of Representatives. That was one of the major arguments about the ACA in 2012 and forward. That the fine for not having insurance when you filed your taxes was in fact a tax, and that originated in the Senate. Ultimately, the Supreme Court ruled that was not the case. We can get into that case and into others later on. But that is where we see differences. In Britain, especially then, one, the king could just say, I'm going to tax your income to pay for this war. The House of Lords could virtually just say, nope, never mind, we're not doing what the House of Commons wants. Whereas in the U.S., both houses must pass a bill before it gets to the president. Both houses must do it, and they must match. That's one of the biggest things that's held up legislation in this country, especially in the last 40 years. If you look at the current stimulus bill in the House versus the Senate, they're daylight and dark. They have almost no similarities between them, let alone actual mirrored items. And because of that, they have to go back and forth between the two houses and agree on one bill that both houses will pass. It's why it takes so long to get things done, which in one sense can be a good thing, and in another can be a bad. It just, in my mind, I can argue both ways. I can argue pro or con for this if I had to. I can do that for virtually any topic you give me, but this is one of those things where it's really meant to slow down government. I could argue that slowing government is a good thing and it's a bad thing. I believe it's a good thing, because when you slow the federal government, you leave power with the states. And the states are set up very similarly. We have a state house and a state legislature here in Texas. We are actually what is known as a weak governor state. The lieutenant governor actually has more political power than the governor. Put in perspective, that would be where you would have Donald Trump as basically a figurehead, someone to make the speeches, meet the other leaders, sign things into law. But the vice president can actually do more, which in only one respect is true. The VP is the deciding vote for the Senate. If there's a tie in the Senate, President pro tempore, Mike Pence at this point in time, is the deciding vote. He is that odd number to where we have a way to make sure we don't have it locked up on a vote. Now, I was wrong earlier. The Senate is elected every 6 years, and it is staggered every 2. So you have about a third of the Senate up every 2 years. And it is for the same reason. As the states were added to the Union, that is where you would see their senators added to the U.S. Senate. And ultimately, it had a lot more done. There was a lot more behind the reason of who is elected every second, fourth, or sixth year. But it really is to ensure that we don't have a full wipe everyone off their seats and put 100 new people in, which again I kind of think might be a good thing. But that is what the founders and through the years the government has decided. Senators must be 30 years of age, which I agree with. I actually would like to see the House membership raised to 30 and the Senate to 35, and the presidential age to 38 or 40. And it's not a maturity thing. It's an experience thing. On the one hand, if you want to argue for true and 100% liberty and freedom, anyone, legal adult, who either has been a citizen for 7 years, in the case of the House and Senate, or who is a natural-born citizen, in the case of the president, should be able to run. But if you take someone fresh out of high school or fresh out of college, they have no way of knowing what they're actually doing in the House and Senate, other than the very basic class they took in school. By saying, if you don't go to college, you've got 12 years to gain life experience. If you do, you've got 6 to 8 years to gain life experience. Or add 5 onto that for the Senate. It's to allow you to get out into the real world, to have to pay your own bills, to have to pay taxes, to have to realize what it's like when your car won't start and all of a sudden your savings is wiped out by repairs or getting a new car. What it's like to live where, well, it's 3 days till payday. I guess I'm eating ramen 3 times a day for 3 days. Now, yes, I had that happen to me when I was in college where, I would get to a point where I didn't have any money and I was not eating lunch on campus. I wasn't ramen 3 times a day because I had food at the house, but it was nice on that 2-hour break between classes to be able to go to the student union and get a grilled cheese or a burger or something. But there were some times, because I was waiting tables, I wasn't making a lot of money, where, I'd just make sure I took my water bottle and I drank a lot of water, which will stave off hunger pangs. And then as soon as I got home, I ate, and then I went to work. But that is an experience that taught me to budget. Right now, we have a lot of people in Congress who think they can just spend. If we had a balanced budget amendment where it was quite literally unconstitutional to go into debt, we'd have a much different country in front of us right now. Right now, when we look at Article 1, originally it was the Senate who chose the vice president. George Washington did not have a VP that ran with him. Adams, Jefferson, Quincy Adams. It just didn't happen. The Senate chose the president pro tempore, who would then also serve as the vice president of the United States. That has been changed to a direct election, which, again, I believe is a good thing. Imagine if the Senate, held by one party, was choosing the vice president for the other party. Imagine 2008. The House and Senate were both Republican-controlled, if I remember right, but the Democrats won the White House. Can you imagine the outcry from every corner you can imagine of Republicans controlling the choice of who will be VP for a Democrat? We're flipping around. Can you imagine the just turmoil it would cause for Democrats to choose who the VP for a Republican is when the Democrats have the power to impeach? quite literally does give you a, we don't like who the people voted for. We're going to put somebody in office who's next in line. We'll impeach the person who won the election, and our guy gets in, and nobody voted for him. And that can still happen today. In 1963, when LBJ took office, before the halfway point of Kennedy's first term, meaning LBJ could only be reelected once, but he appointed his new vice president. Had LBJ been removed from office for any reason, been unable to serve, we would have had a president that no one voted for. It's not impossible. Right now, we have a lot of people pushing to make Nancy Pelosi the president, and only one state and only one district in that state had any say in whether she was sent to Washington, D.C. There's a lot going on, and a lot of people don't understand how all this is set up. When we get to Article 2, this is Article 2 saying the executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the Vice President, chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. Every state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors, equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress, but no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. It basically means no government official can be an elector. The governor or the legislature can't just say, we're going to appoint ourselves. No, they can't do that, which is a good thing. The electors need to come from the people, not from people who have a vested interest in maintaining their own power. And notice it does clearly say representatives and senators. It doesn't give a clear number of any at any time, and it never will. It never should. If populations change and say one day Texas is more populated than New York or California, Texas then would have more representation than those two, because Texas has more people than those two. No person except a natural-born citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of President. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained the age of 35 years and been 14 years a resident within the U.S. This right here tells me that when people say the founders weren't smart enough to realize things would change, to realize that we wouldn't be the exact society they were forever, that's not true. They set out that the president must be a natural-born citizen. But they realized that for a short time, between the adoption of the Constitution and the next election, there may not be anyone eligible to run who wants to. So they allowed for a path to allow people who had not been natural-born citizens of the U.S. George Washington was not a natural-born citizen of the United States. He was a natural-born citizen of Great Britain. He was born and raised in the colonies. He was not born in the United States of America. So they allow for that 14-year residency to allow for, while we're trying to pass this Constitution, and that short period of time right after. Ultimately, it becomes, you must be a natural-born citizen, which basically means your parents are citizens of the U.S. and not subject to the jurisdiction of another country. That's the arguing point I have with the whole, the mother physically gave birth on U.S. soil issue. What happens if an ambulance breaks down in front of the U.S. Embassy in London There are medical people on staff there. The embassy guards are trained limitedly in rendering first aid. What happens if they bring that mother inside to a room, since they don't want to leave her in a car on the street in London, and while they're waiting for another ambulance, she gives birth? She's a British subject, her husband's a British subject, her child becomes a British subject at birth, but by some people, she was born on American soil, she's a citizen. Not the way it's supposed to happen. You have to be born to people subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, and that's the way it should be. If your parents are U.S. citizens and you are born in Yugoslavia while they're on a layover coming home from vacation, you're still a U.S. citizen because they are. If your parents are British diplomats in the U.S., but they don't have the baby in the British embassy, they go to a hospital, you're still a British subject. You are not an American citizen because they aren't. In my mind, it's really that simple. Article 3 sets up the judiciary. And very simply, it sets up the federal court system and the Supreme Court. It allows for Congress to have the power to declare the punishment of treason, but no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person attainted. They take some powers away from the judiciary while setting it up. They're putting these checks and balances in place as they put everything into being. As we go on through it, you will have the full faith and credit statement where that each state shall be given full faith and credit to public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state, and the Congress may, by general laws, prescribe the manner in which such acts, records, and proceedings shall be proved and the effect thereof. Oddly enough, Article 4, Section 2 is where we get the insanity of sovereign citizen. Article 4, Section 2 states, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to the privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. All that means is that Georgia can't post speed limit 60, Georgia citizens 70. Or a speeding ticket is billed at $5 for every mile over the limit for citizens of Georgia, $10 a mile over the limit for everyone else. It basically says that whether you are a citizen of Texas or Georgia or New York or California, it doesn't matter. Every other state has to treat you as if you're a resident, normal, been there forever person when you are in their state. You're subject to their laws. This is very poignant now, especially. My license to carry says I can carry my sidearm, concealed or open, anywhere in Texas, save the few buildings that post the right signage to tell me it would be criminal trespass for me to enter while armed. But if I enter California, that license is useless. New York, Jersey, doesn't matter. I have to obey their laws. But they can't then say, you have a license to carry, you're automatically a felon in our state because we know you own a gun. No, I left that gun in Texas. It's irrelevant. You have to treat me the way you would any other person in this state. I'm unarmed, therefore you can't do jack. What this shows, and we're going to wrap up here, and then I'll get started on the timeline of actual history and such next week. What the whole sovereign citizen thing is it is a twisting of words. Basically, what they say is because the Constitution says the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. They're saying, I'm a sovereign citizen, which means to them, I'm immune from the law. No, it doesn't. It's actually the opposite. It means you are held to the law in whatever state you are in. You can't say, I'm a citizen of Texas, you have to use Texas law. You can't say you're not a citizen of Texas. You are subject to harsher laws than citizens. It proves one thing. Education is failing horrifically right now. Because we have so many people who are so convinced of their own innate rightness about everything that when they start spewing their crap and people say that's wrong, they actually, in some cases, will assault you for telling them no. But that is a topic for another discussion. Trust me. Aside from all this, let me know what your thoughts are. What parts of the Constitution do you think are not taught well enough or not taught at all? What parts confuse you? Remember always, as always, be civil. We're here to discuss, dissent, and debate, not rant and rail like toddlers denied ice cream. Please remember also to subscribe, turn on notifications so you're aware of all content as it posts, and make sure that you are sharing this video to widen the conversation. Until next time, everyone have a wonderful day.